Welcome to the Talking Transformation podcast. I'm your podcast host, Peter Ahmad, recording from Cape Town, South Africa, since June 2019. The Talking Transformation podcast provides an open and accessible platform for built environment professionals and interest groups to share their reflections and aspirations relating to the transformation of places and spaces in South Africa. It's intended to be a celebration of the individuals and community groups who are supporting formal and informal processes that are addressing the challenges of South Africa's history and shaping the future of our neighbourhoods and cities. In today's Talking Transformation podcast, we're catching up with someone who's become a real friend of the show and a standout leader in South Africa. Yolisa Kani. She's back. She's back with us here in Cape Town, bringing her trademark energy and a wealth of experience from both government and the private sector. If you followed Yolisa's journey, you'll know she spent decades at the forefront of transformation, blending policy, stakeholder negotiation and commercial leadership to drive real change in how people and goods move across the country. After a 4-year stint leading public policy for Uber in Southern Africa, she's been back in the public sector for the last 5 years, taking on the pivotal role of Transnet's Chief Business Development Officer. And what a time to be talking about Transnet. The company is showing real signs of a turnaround, operational performance is improving, and there are new ventures like LeaseCo that are being rolled out. There certainly seems to be a renewed focus on unlocking assets and partnerships to relieve, on the one hand, the freight congestion and boost economic activity. But as Yolisa explains, it's not just about moving cargo. It's about the reimagination of our cities, the transport routes, and supporting urban development, which is right at the heart of what we think about and talk about on this Talking Transformation podcast. Some of the big themes that we touch on in our conversation is, on the one hand, the launch of LeaseCo, aiming to mobilize rolling stock and inviting third-party operators to work within the Transnet infrastructure and free up some of the strategic assets for broader development goals. We'll talk about the cultural and leadership shifts that are happening within the organisation and what that means for customers, for cities and the economy over the next 12 to 36 months. We'll also look at the practical steps being taken to turn surplus Transnet property into real urban opportunities and how the company is responding to the calls for more flexible, mixed-use developments in and around the land parcels that they own. We'll also hear about Yolisa's candid reflections on the challenges ahead, the importance of collaboration between public and private sector, and the ambitious milestones set for the coming year. These include LeaseCo's targets and the broader reforms designed to get more freight off the roads and onto rail. So, settle in for a conversation that is as insightful as it is inspiring. And as always, we hope you enjoy the episode. So here we are, Monday, the 20th of October. The year is almost over, but here we are back at the Talking Transformation podcast. It's just gone 2:30 on this Monday afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast. First time since we've spoken to you since September 2019. Welcome here, Yolisa.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the invitation.
It's really great to see you. Welcome to Cape Town.
Thank you.
You're down here on work, if I understand correctly?
I am down here on work. I got here yesterday, though, so I had a nice afternoon, evening type, and I kind of brought the wind to die down a little bit. Sorry to the...
You heard about the marathon,
I could have
right?
come earlier, but hey, I didn't. Oh, shame, man. It's insane.
Yeah, it's been windy. It's a beautiful day out there, but the wind is still blowing. But Welcome. You've blown in for a day's work with Transnet.
Yeah.
I think last time we spoke to you, it's 6 years ago. Can you believe it? It's over 6 years.
Yeah.
And in that period, you've retransitioned back into the public sector. And you've spent, I think it's at least 4 years.
5 years now.
5.
Yeah.
In Transnet as one of their senior excos.
Yeah.
Tell us first about the exit, if you like, from Uber in terms of what that experience was like working in this new e-mobility, and then that decision to come back into the public sector. I'd love to hear your journey in that regard.
Look, I mean, they're two different types of businesses. One is, at least when I started, it had just started. It was a big buzz concept, Uberizing everything, Uber everywhere, Uber anything. And it was a tech startup. I can safely say that when I was there, we were still falling under the definition of a startup, and we had just listed. But I mean, true to my nature, Peter, I like to solve problems. And when the problem is solved, I'm happy to move along. We had just submitted our inputs on the National Land Transport Act, which had no definition, no recognition, no ability to deal with e-hailing services. And we worked quite hard with the legal team globally, across the region and domestically, to just carve out what would work for not just us as a business, but, the e-hailing drivers. And when that was passed, and I think out of the 8 things we submitted, 5 of those went through. I was like, okay, what's next? It was a nice break because I spent 4 years at Uber. A nice break from your typical government infrastructure, transport kind of work. But, when you start at Uber and they take you through the onboarding, they call it Uberversity, and you spend a month, and you've got to do it in your first 3 months. You spend a week, rather, sorry, I'm lying. You spend a week trying to understand the business and the culture. They tell you straight out, it feels like a lot of things. It's a roller coaster ride, but if you still draw a straight line, you see you're on an upward trajectory. You don't feel it at that point. We had regulators to engage. We had taxis that were fighting us. We had drivers to onboard. But with a little bit of hindsight, those were, for me, it was a big shift, because they brought out of me a commercial approach to things. And moving into Transnet and holding a portfolio for group commercial as well, which is looking after our top 20 customers and strategic customers who are responsible for 80% of our revenue, and also being responsible for diversifying the entities' revenue, both in South Africa and outside of South Africa. I pretty much kind of settled in, but you can never settle in 100% in a complex environment like Transnet. So I spent a lot of time banging my head against the wall, trying to understand how does this monster works. Because Transnet is like 8 companies in one.
For sure. Is it the biggest? I've never looked at the numbers, but I'm guessing it must be one of the biggest SOEs.
50,000 stronghold. It's massive. So I struggled in the sense that I don't think anyone can claim a know-how of working in such a complex organization. But you swiftly move on and you get on with the business, and you make new acquaintances. And here I am 5 years later.
A blink of an eye.
I never thought.
It's probably fair to say that the Uber and e-mobility platforms, and there are others, Bolt and so forth, have been one of the biggest disruptions in the transportation mode.
100%. 100%.
That skill set, that having been part of the onboarding in South Africa, going into an organization like Transnet, as you say, now with a commercial eye, as well as this idea of disruption.
Yeah.
How useful was that within that space that you occupy? And maybe tell us a bit about what it is you're doing in that ExCo space.
So, we have our Uber, first and foremost, was very obsessed during my time with its customers.
Sure.
They used to call it customer obsession. And if you think about what obsession means in the literal sense, doesn't necessarily have a good connotation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all seen the obsessive, the negative side of it. Right?
100%. But when you look at from where they were coming from, so you've got to be obsessed with your customer. It must be the first thing on your mind, last thing on your mind. And that's kind of how I've approached the customers. If a customer wants something, the customer's problems are my problems to solve. Who I speak to, how I get things done is my problem, not the customer. Because Uber taught me that there is no business without a customer. So I enjoy working with our customers. I enjoy finding solutions with them, and because they are actually the reason why we survive. Number two, they used to call it big bold bets. So take those big bold bets. It is a long haul game. Nothing happens overnight. I mean, if we're going to talk about LeaseCo was not an overnight concept.
Sure.
All the projects I've worked on have been there before. It's just that, again, to the point of being commercial, people will just walk away if it doesn't happen as quickly as they think it should. But when you are growth and diversification, when you have business development, it is a long haul game. And today, I went to see the Stellenbosch Museum because we've got artwork there.
Yes.
Worth just over R1 billion. Yeah. And the guy I took with me is my stakeholder manager. And it's like, now that I've seen this thing, I didn't realize how massive they are. So as we're driving back, he says to me, so what should we do? I said to him, think about the big, bold bets. Take the biggest bet you can imagine. See what happens.
And put it on the public delivery side of the equation.
So we've mastered the art of delivering such, even though we are a state-owned entity. We've built in policies and frameworks that actually allow us to engage with the private sector, leverage the private sector capital, de-risk the project by sharing them with the private sector. It's still slower than it would be in a government organization, but like every other entity, any investment must be taken through its paces. That's still there. But at least unlike before, if you wrote to me and you said you had a proposal, I could only look at this thing and put it on the shelf because I had no means of doing anything with it because we were constrained by the PFMA.
Sure.
Yeah. So there are ways around that. But I can tell you now, like I said, customer obsession, taking big bold bets, and meritocracy is another thing that I took from Uber. Uber was about, you come with the wild ideas, you get the stuff done, you are our person. It wasn't about who, I suppose politics will always be there, but in the main, they were driving a culture of we recognize people that are doing good work.
Skill and competency.
It's not about who's sitting around whose table. And until today, I'm still like that. My guys know.
For those who possibly don't fully understand Transnet, and as you say, it's a bundling of many different enterprises and divisions. How do you best describe its work?
So Transnet, in short, drives the economy of this country. And I'll bucket it into three groups. You've got the mining commodities. We have ore, we have chrome, we've got manganese, we've got magnetite, we've got coal. All of those combined, I think last year we did about 162 million tons out of the country. On our rail network out of the country. Obviously, it's not, it's good compared to where we come from in the 140s, but we've done 222 before. All of those commodities are required somewhere. There's a market. Be it China, be it Australia, being India, it's needed. And those commodities, I mean, they bring the much needed tax revenue into the country.
For sure.
But it can't and will not happen without an efficient logistics system. We run ports. We've got a good, say, 22,000 kilometers of the rail network that we own under our Transnet infrastructure manager. We've got Transnet Freight Rail, which runs the trains. It's a train operating company. And then we've got our commercial port terminals that are run by Transnet Port Terminals. We then have, obviously, TNPA, the Port Authority, who is the landlord. Those are the guys that make sure that the vessels are ushered in and out.
So those are the operation side of it.
And these are the landlords because they are the ones that are leasing the
Right.
terminals. But I mean, they have a big role to play. They own the real estate. They also navigate these vessels in, and I'm sure you've heard that at some point we had about, I don't know how many vessels in Durban at Anchorage. They couldn't come in.
That's
for
right.
various reasons. It happens even here sometimes because of the weather. So we are key, and we are a cog in driving the economy of this country, not just the economy of South Africa, obviously the region as well. That's our importance. That's why when they say that when Transnet works, the country thrives, literally. We have the biggest portfolio of properties. Probably we're the second largest property owner, second to Public Works. It's a huge asset base, although we're now disposing of our non-core because
assets that you get that can be utilized for other repurposed.
100% by whoever else is interested in them. So that's the important role that we play. We have an OEM rather called Transnet Engineering. They manufacture locomotives and wagons. And the beauty about when they are the ones that are doing that, we maintain the skill in the country.
So, okay.
It's a contribution to industrialization. To a small scale, of course, but I mean, we are the biggest probably in the continent.
I think it's only in recent years I've fully begun to appreciate this idea of scale. And when you talk about, was it 160 million tons or...
That we did in the previous year, and we're aiming for 120 this year, 180 rather this year.
I remember going to meet some cyclists who'd cycled down from the Northern Cape all the way down, following the rail line, and arrived at Saldanha. And we parked up at the port there, and all of those trucks and the rolling stock... Yeah. Stocked with, what's that red stuff? Is that the magnesium
that is manganese.
The manganese.
Yeah.
And it just never, it wasn't, it just didn't stop. It was kilometre after kilometre of carriages that were rolling stock, which were taken. And that's when I started to understand this idea of scale. And the point that you're making is that if that doesn't move, the economy doesn't move, and the ability for us to do anything in relation to our cities, in terms of our urban, rural areas, forget it.
Everything.
So it really is the fundamental. And I guess that's why Transnet finds itself at the very sharp end of the wedge in terms of scrutiny, in terms of performance. And I mean, there's here in Cape Town, always hearing about the port and how it, can we take it on? The city wants to. That's a conversation for another day. I think the one thing that seems really exciting, it seems to be starting to turn
100%.
Turn the ship around in terms of performance, is around this LeaseCo arrangement.
Yeah.
When we said let's talk about, I was like, well, let me try and understand this. But in a nutshell, what is LeaseCo about, and why is it important for the future of Transnet and the economy that we're talking about?
Yeah. Let me start with the reason I'm here. I'm actually here on a stakeholder engagement, a visit. I was supposed to proceed to Saldanha on Wednesday, but I have to go back tomorrow. There's another pressing matter I need to take care of. But this morning I met with the Western Cape government, and we are on the verge of signing an MOU, which will then be annexed with different addendas depending on what kind of partnership we want to go into. We've talked about the digitization at the port terminals, using real-time data and how we use that data to improve on our efficiencies, get to make the lives of our customers better. So you're right, we're turning the corner. And we've done this successfully with our customers as well, where we collaborate and partner on various initiatives. But coming back to LeaseCo. So when we first conceptualized LeaseCo, we were looking at the North-South corridor from DRC, Zambia, Zimbabwe, all the way into Richards Bay.
So this is a fully continental perspective that we're thinking of. This isn't even regional. This is the bigger continental picture.
100%. And we looked at the challenges, and we looked at year on year, their volumes are declining. I think that line can take maybe, let's just say, just under 1 million tons. In its current state, it's taking about 300. There is copper from the DRC that needs to come this way. There is sulfur and fertilizer that could be going up north. And there were various studies that were done by the World Bank to say, yeah, look, the infrastructure is not in a good shape. DRC, there's hardly any rail infrastructure. It's trucks all over, hardly any roads. These are sovereign states that do things as they please, as they should. There's no coordinated or coordination in terms of how the trains run. So if you have a train coming from Zimbabwe coming my way, those schedules don't necessarily talk to each other.
Right.
Type of thing. There's no integrated transport planning, so to speak.
So there's a real recipe for delay and inefficiency inherent within the system.
Inherent in the system. But then the one thing that we realize is that actually one other thing that could be easy to solve for is rolling stock, ring fencing, rolling stock. Zimbabwe, Zambia's assets can't come into South Africa because they're not railway safe according to RSR standards.
Okay.
So we're leasing these assets to them. And these are not our, what we call A fleet. It's what we call B fleet. It's still in good shape, but we don't use it because we've got newer generation. Right. Nonetheless, we thought, let's just ring fence rolling stock. Let's see if we can establish an SPV. And these assets would be ring fenced specifically for the corridor, right? By the various railway authorities. They gave us their volume demand and we were like, good to go. We've got the assets. But this thing morphed as the rail reform became a reality. To say that rail reform is here, our network is being opened to other train operating companies. Where are they going to get rolling stock from? As in almost immediately. And LeaseCo was then pivoted to not just look at the north-south corridor or cross-border volumes, but to enable train operating companies. So what then happens with the rail reform is that we were vertically separated. TFR is now a train operating company that runs trains on a network or infrastructure that is managed by one of our newly established subsidiaries, which is TRIM, Transnet Infrastructure Manager. Like everyone else, TFR had to apply for a slot. Mm-hmm. And in that first round, which closed in February this year, and the announcement was made now recently in August, 11 new train operating companies were given slots. They have about 2 years to get themselves organized. Right. Out of that 11, 7 came to LeaseCo for assets. So we lease out, in the main it's wagons. We lease out, we've got different types of wagons. They come to us and they'll tell you, I've got this cargo, I've applied for a slot, I need to move from this point to the next. Do you have the assets for me? And that's how we are currently running LeaseCo. However, we don't have the capital. We don't have that extensive expertise for leasing. Thirdly, we need new markets. So we went out to the market and we looked for a partner. And that tender closed on the 4th of August. We've now kind of whittled it down to the 2 out of the first phase, and we'll take it through the process up until we get a nod that we can proceed with them on an RFP. Once we proceed with those, on the other side, we'll come back with our preferred bidder. Hopefully, they'll have the capital. We then will invest in brand new assets that will lease out. So look at it this way. Right now, we're using the assets that we have because they're standing there,
sure,
rotting and being stripped and being vandalized and all sorts. And we can actually refurbish. They're refurbishable. Put them back on the line. But the ultimate goal is to build something similar to your car rentals, like your Avis, in the real space.
So you're basically taking the existing assets, the existing rolling stock, and you're leasing that out.
Yeah.
You're also looking at a massive refurbishment program.
100%.
But that will be funded in different ways via the concessions that are being given to this bidder. Is that right? Who will operate?
We haven't found the partner as yet, but what we're doing now is that we list the assets footstoots.
Right. As
So
seen. Yeah. So if there's a problem, it's not your problem. It's
100. It's actually my problem in the sense that ideally we would want to give these things out in I suppose, in an operational manner, but or we would want to refurbish them ourselves and give them to you, but we don't have that capital. So we then thought, what's the quickest way of responding to the customer's needs? And most customers, all of them actually are saying, I'm happy. Because if you look at that price of that compared to a new build, it's still a drop in the ocean. We then maintain this thing as and when it's supposed to be maintained. So all the customers that we're working with now are taking them footstools. They will refurbish. They go to Transnet Engineering. If Transnet Engineering doesn't have the capability or can't meet their requirements, they can go to any OEM, but we have a gold standard that we've set.
fantastic.
And then it's on the line. And that's just the tactical leases. Once we have our partner, and hopefully would have concluded this process March next year, then we establish that joint venture between ourselves and them and their partner. They bring in the cash and we're good to go. We will take the very same assets, by the way, into this transaction together with the contracts that we've signed. So they'll find us working.
At what stage does this then start to generate income and revenue for Transnet? Or is it almost from the get-go on the way that you've structured the thinking?
We've structured it such that Transnet Engineering already is going to get revenue from the refurbishments.
Right.
The sooner the guys can have the assets, the sooner they can access the network, which is revenue for the infrastructure manager, because you pay to access the line.
Understood.
From a leasing point of view, the first customer would like to start running in March next year, and then the rest follow. So on my end, I'm anticipating that maybe the first quarter of next year, we start making that revenue. Right now, our main focus is we look at the customer's needs, their start date, and we then engage with TE to ensure that they can meet that deadline. Then we're good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
If we look at more recent history in South Africa on the negative side, if I take the PRASA locomotive story, how do we ensure that we don't have a repeat of that in this approach? Are there good checks and balances that Transnet, through lessons learned the hard way, have been able to implement to ensure that the refurb and this whole LeaseCo is done in a really efficient and best bang for buck approach?
Look, I think LeaseCo is a no-brainer in the sense that we've taken assets that are otherwise sitting in the felt and they are rotting.
Sure.
Park that. But generally, we bring in strong governance processes into the system. I sit in most of them. From the minute you conceptualize a transaction, you have to go through, we have what we call the joint investment external partner selection process.
I'm sure that's an acronym in there somewhere.
We call it JIPS.
JIPS, right.
And
JIPS.
then we put together JIPS, and we realized that it had some stumbling blocks to it that were not quite working, so we established JIPS 2. And it was funny this morning, my guy has sent a memo to EXCO sitting tomorrow, and the company secretary calls to say the recommendation is wrong. He says, but according to JIPS 2, this is how we do it now. I'm like, yes, we're tying ourselves into a knot with our
So
own
JIPS
framework.
is telling you what to do now, yeah?
And it's not easy, but it's all in the name of governance. We've got strong governance structures. JIPS tells you exactly how to get a transaction across.
Right.
The things that you need for it to be deemed to be commercially viable. And, we still go to market because we're a government entity. We need a transparent and fair process. But it has made life easy. It brings in there's a lot of internal audit work to be done. We work with our internal auditors. They bring in external auditors as well. Lots of property checks on the transaction. Due diligences are done. In fact, that's where we're at now with these two partners.
You're doing the hard yards of understanding who they are and their bona fides.
100%. And then off it goes. And if it doesn't make commercial sense, it doesn't make commercial sense.
Sure.
Remember the DCT2 where we're stuck in court with the Filipinos and APM terminals where they contested one of our transactions.
Right.
There was a court ruling recently. And we were vindicated in the sense that we've always said the transaction was above board. It's just that every time somebody thinks they can challenge the processes, they're banking on the fact that people sort of assume that every government transaction is corrupt.
100%.
And therefore you're bound to find something. Nothing was untoward. The transaction is now free to proceed.
Well, I certainly get the sense that the scrutiny has been ratcheted up, and that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, certainly.
And best of luck with that due diligence and getting to. So you're saying March next year is the goal.
March next year is my target. It's one of our government framework guarantees. When government gave us those that 90 odd billion, there were conditions to it, and one of them is bringing private sector on board for certain transactions, and ensuring that one of them is LeaseCo is there. We've got about 32 conditions that we need to satisfy, and I'm responsible for one.
Okay, well, 132.
No pressure at all.
When you and I first met back in the day, COJ, City of Joburg, transport planner.
Yeah.
A lot of the conversations would have been around how we integrate things like bus rapid transit, rail services with higher densities. What we've seen now in more recent times for example, here in Cape Town, has been the desire to put residential land uses close to the port, particularly along this main access route. And it's been quite a challenging because of the nature of
business.
The business and that compatibility issue that comes back to. Now, where I'm going with this, Yolisa, is clearly one of the big things is for us to get more freight off the road and onto rail. And second of all, to be able to have a far more flexible approach to land uses that are compatible. Any thoughts that you want to share around, this idea of the shift of modality, which I think is fundamental to the efficiency of our road infrastructure, and then B, this idea of when we start looking at land uses in relation to port structures, which it's very difficult to move them. So if you start to put competing land uses nearby, you've got potentially a threat.
Look, there's a couple of things. I mean, on the road to rail migration is very important. I mean, there was a time when, I think it was in the year 1718, that we transported 227 million tons of cargo on our. We certainly would like to get there, but I mean, the times are different. The rail network is troubled. We've got a serious issue with vandalism and cable theft. Be that as it may, the minister has made a declaration that by 2030, there should be 250 million tons of rail addressable cargo on rail. We know our capabilities, we know our limitations, we know what we can do. That 250 is not a Transnet only target. That's why these train operating companies, all of us as a collective, are meant to get us to 250 and beyond. That's why it's important that you don't just give them access, but you also give them rolling stock, because the two go hand in hand. So it is something that we have accepted as a challenge from the minister. In fact, it's not even a challenge, it's a directive. What we're also working on, because it's one thing that we're now going to have the private sector accessing the network because it's now been liberalized. The reality is the state of the line. They're going to derail like us. They're going to be subjected to the same cable theft, the same vandalism, all of those. But we are working, we seem to have some sort of agreement with our partners, our customers, to say, even before the lines get concessioned, if they're ultimately going to be concessioned, we need that network improved now, not later, now. So we have what we call the customer collaboration policy. I have to think, we call it the CCP. CCP enables us to co-invest in infrastructure, whether it's at the port or on rail, with the customers. It's quicker. They have the cash, and then we have a repayment mechanism between the two of us. We do it all the time. That this is just, however, at a much larger scale and dedicated to the real elephant in the room, which is the state of our infrastructure, which has suffered years and years of maintenance backlog. You can't go around this mountain. It has to be climbed.
And once it's climbed and conquered, how do you ensure that the challenges, the vandalism, the theft that what's the urban management techniques or lessons that you're going to employ to ensure that this brand new stuff doesn't deteriorate? Because that's such a big challenge for PRASA, Transnet, municipal infrastructure. It's such a big challenge.
There's so many players there, but I mean, if you remember SIDS,
City Improvement Districts.
100%. That was not just us as the city. There were other stakeholders. There were businesses with a vested interest. We still have Kumba wants iron ore out of the country as quickly as possible and as many volumes as they possibly can get on the line. And so does the next mining company. And so does Agri. They want the oranges and nutches and the grapes out. And so does the auto. They want parts coming in. They want fully built units out of the country. So at least there is that understanding. They work with us on security.
Right.
But as much as it has made some improvement, but I mean, we need SAPs. We need our courts to work. If people are arrested, apprehended, there must be a conviction that comes out of that. But the syndicates are hectic.
Sure.
You can arrest today, tomorrow they're back in numbers. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking there about the foundations, right? The very basis of governance 101.
We really would want to be seen as national points of interest. Maybe that would flip things around. On our own...
So definition as a key point within the infrastructure.
100%.
Interesting.
Of course, I mean, our lines run in the most remote of areas, but we know the choke points. We know the data tells us where these things are broken. And even at the ports, I mean, we've seen incidents of stowaways. Okay, we haven't seen that in a while, but honestly and truthfully speaking, we make the economy work. We need more help than what both ourselves and our customers can do.
Maybe a geek question from my side, but how much do you use GIS to help you with, as you said, these pain points, the analysis of data in a spatial way? Is that something that you're familiar with within the Transnet space?
I don't think we take it to that granular level, but certainly we do use technology, because what we've done now, we've got what they call outcomes-based security services. So you don't say to us, you don't get paid for deploying resources.
Just warm bodies we want.
You get paid for reducing the number of incidents.
Right.
It's as simple as that. We have drones, we've got some technology. But I mean, I don't think we've gotten to the most granular level, because now what you are bringing in is to say, but if it's happening in this area, you then have to drill down to say, what is happening? If you localize this from a spatial point of view, what is happening there? We know that at the end of it all is unemployment. That's the truth.
And straight up crime, right? Straight up, I don't want to play by the rules of the game.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So, yeah.
Interesting. I say I'm got my GIS head on there. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Maybe the quick thought on the land use side of it in terms of of this challenge, because on the one hand there's an appeal with it.
So look, we've got vast lands that are suitable for all sorts of things. But let's start with the port. The port has port limits or port boundaries, as we call it.
100%.
You can't develop anything inside of the port limits other than what the port is intended for. Let's start there. So that first boundary is off limits.
Accepted, yeah.
Yeah, we can do warehousing and storage facilities. That's doable. Then take it outside to say, today you do have residents that are asking that the port stops working at a certain time because they want to sleep. It's, and on the one hand, businesses are saying, hey, you got to work 24 hours. The other ones are like, hey, we want to sleep. So you've got to figure out what works. But I mean, from a TOD perspective, that space remains untapped. I'm very chuffed with what Hisham did with the student accommodation. Student accommodation is a big thing.
For sure.
But if you look at if I were my transport planning head, if you look at how many people have shifted from taxis to walking because of affordability, you have to ask yourself, do we still have that problem of people staying away from their work environments? The answer is yes. So there could be better use of these. But again, you have to think about the fact that our lines come from the mines into the cities, but you do have those small towns, and we're very much aware of what happens in a town where you used to have rail and it no longer runs through it. It does have a severe impact on the socio-economic status of that particular town. But coming back to TOD as we know it, it would be difficult to run along those goods lines.
Sure.
But please don't get me wrong, there are developments there, informal as they are. So it's something that could be leveraged far more than we actually are doing right now.
Be interesting to see if there's some sort of symposium or working arrangement between the private sector and Transnet and PRASA to discuss this. Public works you've mentioned as well. But I mean, if this idea of what is possible and what is a coherent and credible approach to the disposal of state assets, which are non-core, which are well located, and then how do we get the best result for our cities and our communities on the back of that? I think it'll be interesting to think about that.
So, I mean, we're doing this in many ways. Where we can list the property to you, we can list it to you. Where we've identified it as being part of the pool that needs to be disposed for non-core, we are working on a strategy there. And we've now, I think, gotten to a point where even the 3,000 odd that we need to dispose of, we've clustered them, right? Because you'll find in some cases that we're not going to get what we probably thought we were going to get. I mean, we tried selling the Carlton and we are not successful. And I read an article where somebody says, take the keys, give them to the first person you come across in small street. I was like, yeah, that could be a better plan because it costs us to run these buildings and run infrastructure rates and taxes for something that doesn't generate revenue.
It is astonishing. I was there down by the Carlton maybe 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was shocked.
The retail side is working very well.
Which is astonishing.
Yeah, the retail side is working very well.
But what happens?
It's less than ideal.
Yeah.
I mean, I work there. We've just recently moved. It's not the same. And even if we were to do, as we are trying to do something, it still needs a seed approach where businesses
at the very least,
in the city make a deliberate effort to just turn this thing around. I looked outside my window just the other day and there were cops all over. They were removing the street vendors. It looks clean. And the cops are parked there. But the question is, until when?
Until when? And how do those street traders operate? And how can they be facilitated to
operate? It was insane, though. My eyes could, as far as my eyes could stretch, you see one stall after the other. You can't walk, you can't drive. It was insane, but that G20 cleanup presents us with an opportunity to find a lasting solution.
For sustainability and longevity. Well, very, very interesting. And again, back to our sort of roots there in COJ.
It's a shadow of itself, but...
Well, let's hope that it still has another chapter or more to because it would be too sad to see Joburg fall through the floor.
I hope so. It doesn't look good. The potholes, the building, but I've also seen some buildings being cleaned up. So I think I hope, like I said, we take advantage of the G20 opportunity and clean up permanently.
It's a shame it takes an initiative like the G20 to get going, but we'll take it. We'll take it.
We certainly will take it.
Yolisa, I'm going to take you back September 2019. We sat there on 16th floor, Civic Centre, Cape Town. It's one of the first episodes of podcasts I think I recorded in the way that we did around my table, and it was after work. And it was a lovely conversation. It really was one of those ones I keep going back to. And it was an inspiring conversation in so many ways. I asked you, if you remember, at the end of this, do you have any words of advice for young professionals who might be in the built environment, who might be listening to this? And you said, and you almost said it in a whisper, you said, work in government. Yeah. And within however many months you were back to Transnet from Uber. That was such a wonderful moment of your belief in the public sector,
Totally.
in the idea of service and what it can and should be. And you've got a track record which excels in that.
Very true.
Here we are, 2025. I'm going to ask you the same question. For somebody listening to this who are watching it for the first time, hearing you speak, a leader in your field, in one of the most senior positions in the country, what would your advice be to that person watching or listening?
There's a lot to be done. We have a lot to do as a collective, as a country. And we just can't afford, it can't get worse than what we're already seeing. And it needs dedicated minds. It needs, even if you're not in the private sector, now I'm of the view that it is a collaborative effort. But government has a big role to play in making or creating an conducive environment for both people and business to thrive. We can all pack our bags and go. Geopolitics are also another mess.
Sure.
Can't imagine myself settling in for now, anywhere else but here, right? But I also can't be worried about my safety, things that don't work. I cannot. But I still think that we owe it. Now, I'm not directing it to the young people. I'm directing it to those who are in power to say, we owe it to everyone and generations to come to professionalize the government sector space. The pride we used to have. A friend of a friend bought an entire floor, penthouse. Well, he turned it into a penthouse just across the Nelson Mandela Bridge. Now I asked him, why did you buy here? Because he has loads of cash, this man. Like a multi.
Sounds like a good person to know.
No, honestly. And he says, no, at that time I was inspired by the Nelson Mandela Bridge, the lights.
Yeah, of course.
But the lights are not lighting no more. His main
Glass panels were shattered. I think they've been fixed recently, but...
I laughed. I was like, the very same reason that brought you here is not there. But, I mean, it's possible. It's really possible to rebuild. But we shouldn't allow ourselves to get to a point of no return.
For sure.
Because it's going to take us much longer and it will be more expensive. But, I mean, the youth, there's many ways of skinning a cat. You could be in government, but you could be doing amazing things outside of government. These kids are not short of ideas. I went to a conference and one of these famous DJs, Oskido, I'm talking about a big conference funded by African Bank. And they were talking about how music and fashion are contributing to the GDP. Imagine bringing music festivals. I mean, you see with the marathons what that does to a city when people are visiting.
And I mean, we've just seen it this weekend, sadly, with so many people.
So I think we've got to flip the script and say, how else do we do this? Not all of us are going to be in politics. Not all of us are going to be in the private sector. But it's our mess. It's everyone's mess, man. We're going to have to sort it out. I don't want to find ourselves in another situation where you have to worry about load shedding.
Yeah.
You load. In fact, I'm doing a study on electric vehicles. And everyone I've spoken to is saying electric vehicles, we've missed that boat. Let's rather go to hybrid as a country. Because it is our reality that you're going to put charging ports from here to PE. How are you going to secure that? And so we are awash with ideas and opportunities, but, I still say they must come and work for the government sector. But I'd add to that to say, to solve the problems that we have, you don't necessarily have to be in government.
Interesting. A nice little adaptation to the wise words from 2019.
Yeah.
Yolisa, again, from my side, I can't thank you enough. We could talk for hours and hours more. Yeah. We could go into the BRTs, the bus rapid transit, your thinking around the state of the play for public transport. That's going to have to be another conversation for another day.
Thank you, Peter.
In the meantime, Have a lovely rest of your
Thank you.
stay with us here in Cape Town. Don't get blown away.
I will not.
And when you travel safely.
No, thank you so much. I mean, thank you for my old boss at Uber used to say, repetition never spoils a prayer. It's nice to be given a platform to talk about our business.
Wonderful
It's a
stuff.
beautiful, beautiful space to be in.
Thank you.
Lots is happening. Those who are in the built environment still have a place in logistics because the two do go hand in hand. But yeah, I wish us all the best.
I'm wishing you the best, and I'm looking. I'll be phoning you in March and saying, "Are you ready to go?"
No, you do that. But thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Talking Transformation podcast. If you have enjoyed, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Please do tell your colleagues and friends about the work that we're doing and the content that we're generating. We're forever indebted to Tribal Need for allowing us to use the track Flags as our main theme tune for this series. And if you have comments or suggestions, if you want to be part of the Talking Transformation podcast, please do reach out to us via talkingtransformation101@gmail.com or contact us through the Blue Sky platform at TTPod.